Brainstorm, bringing great minds and ideas together, exploring a wide variety of opportunities, achieving academic excellence, using the latest technology, government's impact, preparing for 21st century careers, parenting and health issues, topics shaping tomorrow. Brainstorm with Lisa Willever, bringing great minds and ideas together.
Welcome to Brainstorm. I'm Lisa Willever, and today we are talking about preschool. In fact, we're discussing whether to preschool or not to preschool. But before we begin, let's take a look and see what's happening in preschools today. There was a time when kindergarten was a child's first experience with formal schooling. According to some reports, in the 1970s, only 20% of children attended preschool. But by 1998, nearly half of all preschool children in the U.S. were enrolled in a full-time program. Studies have shown that the introduction of formal schooling during preschool years has major and lifelong benefits. The evidence is clear. Kids who attend preschool programs are better prepared for kindergarten than kids who don't. Children who attend high-quality preschool enter kindergarten with better reading skills, more extensive vocabularies, and better developed basic math skills. The controversy regarding preschool doesn't pertain as much to value as it does to funding. Today I'm joined by Yazminelli Gonzalez, who is a special needs preschool teacher, and Dr. Jim Fazzone. Let me take a deep breath for this one. Former teacher, administrator, professor, coach, and the former mayor of the city of Burlington in New Jersey.
That's correct.
Very good. Well, thank you both for joining me today. Let's just get started and let's talk about preschool. So, what are the benefits, Jim? What are the benefits of sending a child to preschool?
Well, I think there's a lot of moving parts when it comes to preschool. We have a lot of parents who are working. There is a lot of research on student achievement and readiness for school when it comes to preschool. And it's a parental choice. We are getting to a point where some districts are offering preschool as part of the K-12 program, which becomes part of the preschool 3, preschool 4, and then K-12 program. I think we'll try to get to it by the end of your show, I hope. But there are advantages to having a formal program with super teachers and excellent facilities offered to the children in districts throughout the nation.
Okay, now, Yazminelli, you're in a preschool classroom.
Correct.
And it's an inclusion classroom.
Yes.
Okay, so talk to me about the growth you see from the beginning of a school year to the end of the school year with your students.
Well, with me being an inclusion teacher, I see kids who come in who are nonverbal, who by the end of the school year, they're speaking, saying, full sentences, conversing with other children, interacting with peers and adults. There's a tremendous growth with our children attending preschool. I would definitely say that.
That's
you can
fantastic.
see academically, socially, emotionally, you see a huge progress in most
And
of
probably more during those formative years, then you notice differences as they start hitting upper elementary and middle school, where they kind of, they grow academically and socially, but not as much as a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, I'm sure.
Yes, I agree. I would agree with that.
So Jim, let me ask you this. Biologically, physiologically, what makes preschool so important to children? What's so important about that age group attending school?
Well, I think it's the educational process that takes place during those formative years. Everyone doesn't necessarily need that formal preschool program, but I think every child needs to have the kinds of discussions, experiences, and we can go back to Piaget, to Dewey, Erickson, Kolb, those kind of people who talked about the experiential learning. I think that needs to take place. With 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds. But it could be as much as a formal program, but it could be as informal as taking the kids to the park, looking at the birds, showing them the berries, getting down on the floor and playing games with them, reading them their favorite book. So I think we have to talk about more the experiences that they need to be ready for school, and then how we're going to provide them, formal, informal, or a hybrid of the two.
Yeah, I think combination is probably wonderful. What's your opinion?
No, I was going to say, preschool allows them to have their first experience in a structured setting. Preparing them for kindergarten, academically, socially, emotionally, everything that, and like he said, building off of their curiosity, whatever they are motivated to learn about. It can be playing outside in the park, and if they find a snail, you can do a whole study on snails. You just build off of their curiosity.
And I know when I was in college, we read a lot about how, kids that age are such sponges.
They are.
They really absorb so much, whether it's learning a second language or, developing a love for reading and a love for learning. It seems like it's so important to hit that age level. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I would argue, but you both brought up some great points. One, they are sponges. Two, they're going to like certain things more than others.
Right.
But as parents, we probably have some interests that they may piggyback on. So whatever those experiences, time spent with children is never wasted.
Exactly.
And it doesn't have to be as structured, but the important thing is that we take time to read that book. Sometimes I know when I had my kids, I'm tired, I don't want to go to sleep. I'm reading the book. Go slower, Dad. So take the time, and they grow up fast. So enjoy that time to play those games. Take them for walks. Take them to the movies, the zoo. The world can be that early childhood program for your kids inside that classroom as well as outside the classroom.
You agree?
Yes, I definitely would agree with that. And speaking of being sponges, even just today, and it literally happened today, but one of my autistic children, students, he was in the library area, and I was actually reading a story to one of my other kids. And he walked over, and he just kind of took over the book. And it was funny to me because he just kept saying, "Oh, nice job. Can you show me?" He did everything that I did previously. He mirrored everything. And I'm like, he doesn't do that when we're in a group setting. But it just made me smile to see that he did it when we weren't even discussing it. He did it on his own.
And I would imagine those milestones, especially at such a tender age where it's so indicative of what will happen in their futures, to see those little milestones has to be so fulfilling as a teacher.
Yeah, and you might not see it every day. We
Yeah,
might
I'm
see
sure
it, like today. This was the first day that I've ever seen him do that, and this is December.
Yeah.
But he's paying attention, and he's listening to what we're doing.
Well, I always hear, there's always pushback on preschool. There's, kind of a lot of the population feels that preschool is frivolous or just something extra parents do, or babysitting. Your mom and dad are working. It's a place to send the kids. And the two things I normally hear are, well, I didn't go to preschool, and I turned out fine. And I also hear people say a lot of things just about the age group. I don't remember anything from when I was 4. And people equate you not having a solid memory of what happened at that age to it doesn't matter. And it's very difficult to try to explain to somebody that these things, whether you remember them or not, they formed you. They formed who you are.
When someone says they turned out fine, I also want to, that's what you're thinking. I'd like to hear from the neighbors and the relatives what their thoughts are.
Show up at
on
Thanksgiving.
that particular statement.
Right.
Yeah.
That's actually a very good point.
Right. Well, I know I attended preschool when I was younger, and I still remember my 2 teachers.
Do you?
Like, I do. And I up until recently, I used to see one of them. And I remember some of the things that we've done. I remember going and brushing our teeth after we ate, and we had to learn how to wash our hands properly. Like, there's some things that stick out.
So maybe they don't remember 3 and 4 years old because they weren't in preschool, so they didn't have great memories not being in preschool. Maybe that's what, the repetition, being in the classroom, learning, making friends at that age, maybe that stands out more when you're involved in a formal program.
And let's say they did turn out fine. Well, maybe their experiences, let's give them the benefit of the doubt at this point.
Okay.
But
For
maybe,
sake of argument.
Yeah. Who are we to judge? But but possibly they had those kinds of experiences in their household. Possibly they had books around the house. They did go. The parents spoke the King's English. They did get a chance to travel and have a fulfilling 3 and 4-year-old experience in their household. But I don't think that every student has that. And when you start to talk about whether it's the urban area or whether it's the rural area, people don't have the same kinds of resources. That's why I think it's really important that as public schools, we tend to offer this so everybody has similar experiences, so each child is ready for school when they hit kindergarten and 1st grade. Because if you miss too much, you're behind, and it's tough to catch up.
When you think about it, this might actually be preschool, which some people kind of just diminish in their minds and they don't think it's important, but it could be one of the most important factors to breaking the poverty cycle.
Absolutely.
Because you give a generation, poverty is multi-generational, so if you can give a generation more of an equal footing by the time they hit kindergarten. When I was teaching, I remember, I taught in the inner city in Trenton, like you do, and I remember our kindergartners often couldn't identify letters, and that sets you behind, not just in district and in your school, but when you compare your school to other schools, Princeton and different places in the country that kids are moving at the speed of light, and you're still doing letter identification when kindergarten starts. So I think maybe preschool is really one of those, diamonds in the rough at this point, as far as the way people perceive it, of the power that it holds.
I will tell you this, I was a principal in an urban setting where we had a top-notch, probably, I feel like the best early childhood center in the state, if not anywhere. And there were some very affluent districts nearby, and they had some folks had some properties in town, and they were slipping their kids in and getting them enrolled in our program.
Into your urban program.
Exactly. And then I had to throw them out because when the seats filled up and some of the local people said, well, I want to sign my child. I said, well, there are not enough seats left. They said, oh yeah, there are, because so-and-so lives in such and such, and then I would have to throw 5 or 6 of them out. So those folks in those affluent suburban areas were sending their kids to our program, so I think that does give a lot of credibility to what you said. People perceive it as being an excellent program, and they knew our program was good. So, I think that just gives credibility to the whole concept.
Well, and I think, people, maybe now, maybe we finally hit the point where people realize it's not just about playing. That play is a part of preschool.
Preschool, you build on your literacy and math skills, at an
and
early
even the
age.
play in preschool, like preschool teachers are amazing. Preschool teachers and kindergarten teachers, I think we should double your salary. I'm going on record saying that, because I did kindergarten for a few months, and wow. Right. My normal grade was 4th, so it was a little bit higher, but preschool and kindergarten, you take play and you make it educational.
Exactly.
And that is, that's where the value is in this, that you're teaching them so much on their age appropriate level, in terms they understand, with excitement. And kindergarten teachers, preschool teachers, they make everything exciting. Right. When I do school author visits and I walk in to read to the younger kids, usually they're too young to go to the assembly, so I'll go in the classroom, and the teachers say, we're going to sit on the rugs, and that's a big deal, just the way they use their voices.
Very animated, you have to be full of energy.
And you gather their attention that way. Like, you are masters at, getting their attention and letting them know what you approve of and what's a good thing to do, and then when you disapprove, they know from your tone of voice.
Good point. I think even I've seen the kids just getting ready, sitting on the rug, handing out the equipment, going over what day it is, what the weather is of that day. Each kid taking turns. There are a lot of moving parts, and there are a lot of pieces to that puzzle that make that learning fun and experiential, I guess is the term we hear all the time, but that hands-on approach to learning at that age, I think, is huge.
And also what you're teaching them not just the academics of, getting ready to prepare to be a learner. You're teaching them discipline. You're teaching them how to function in a group collectively, because, you often have kids who are home during 3 and 4-year-old, and they get to school, they don't know how to share. Right. Well, they might be the older sibling, so they're used to knocking people down a little bit.
Absolutely, and you're right. But that's what I mean when I say it's their first, sometimes their first experience in a structured setting, where we're teaching them responsibility. We're teaching them how to make choices, how to interact, and how to solve their own, emotional problems with their peers before we even intervene with them. So we teach them a lot besides academics.
We have to go to a break right now, so we will be right back with more Brainstorm in just a moment.
Everything starts out small. The things that hurt us, they all start from somewhere. The words we say, the things we do, they can grow into something else. What was small and innocent can become big and sometimes scary. All it takes is one comment, one picture, one video for something to catch fire. But a big problem doesn't need a big response. Not at first.
There's a hope that's waiting for you.
Even if we don't know what to say, the eye emoji can be that first step we take. Let's all pledge to take that first small step together and change the world in a big way. I'm a witness, and so are you.
There are 16 million children struggling with hunger in America. This is a serious problem, but one we can solve. Visit feedingamerica.org to help. Together we can solve hunger. Together we're feeding America.
We just finished dinner and it was time for homework. He hates homework. I know he's bright.
Why is it so hard for me?
He's
I'm
just
trying
gotta
as
try a
hard
little
as
harder.
I can.
1 in 5 children struggle with learning and attention issues. Go from misunderstanding to understood.org.
And we're back with Brainstorm. I'm Lisa Willever, and I'm joined today with Dr. James Fazzone and Yazminelli Gonzalez, and we're talking about preschool. In fact, our question is to preschool or not to preschool. So this doesn't sound like the most controversial topic, preschool. It sounds like a lot of little kids going to school and playing, but I know there's so much more involved. I want you to talk to me, Jim, about creativity, because I think right now what we're having in education is a creativity drought, so to speak, with the structure, the standardized testing, the curriculums, the demands. At least I'm hoping in preschool, there's still time to enjoy learning and have fun learning. So tell me about what happens in these preschool classrooms.
I think the preschool lends itself to the creativity.
I hope so.
We don't have the testing. There's no standardized test that we typically give. They may have some of those canned tests, but it's not something that's high stakes and that we're comparing one school district to another and we're telling teachers that we're going to fire them if the kids don't score a certain way. So I really think
Good news.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I don't want to speak for Yazminelli's class.
We still are responsible for certain things.
Okay.
Okay, so there's even stress in teaching 3-year-olds, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But however, I have noticed, and again, I've worked K to 12. I will say that anytime we have one of those high-stakes standardized tests that take place in the spring, there's more stress. I would argue that, based on my observations, that the 3-year-old and 4-year-old programs have more creativity going on, more hands-on things going on. There's more creative license provided even from the state, and again, states are the ones who are in control of each of the educational processes in their states. It's really not federal government that's in charge. Mm-hmm. So these things can vary from state to state. However, I would argue that creativity is paramount in the 3- and 4-year-old programs, where as you get more into middle school and high school, the standardized tests tend to raise the level of stress.
Okay,
I definitely would agree with him. And then actually when you're teaching the 3- and 4-year-olds, you have to be creative in what you do in order to capture their attention, in order to capture their interest in wanting to learn. You have to just be creative all the way around.
I would imagine. Do you
It
do any
isn't
singing?
as-
Do you sing?
Oh, I sing every day.
Sing every day, right?
I sing every
See,
day.
all the great kindergarten and
You have
preschool
to. You
teachers
make up a
sing.
song, and when they're lining up, if they're in the hallway, you just have to make up a song.
So you just riff
just to keep
all
their
day
attention
long.
all day. Yeah, definitely. Because you don't want them just to sit idle for a while.
Absolutely. Now, is it a full day preschool where you're working?
I am in a full day preschool.
Okay.
They're there from 8:45 to 3:25.
Okay. Now, I know we always hear that, the preschool, when people talk about the benefit, it's more the academics. But the socialization, as you touched on before the break, kids trying to solve their own problems and learn how to get along with others. Why don't you talk to me about that as far as the social aspect, and even being in a school where there's older children and other, the whole thing, the comprehensive socialization.
Well, I definitely know that it gives them an opportunity to have social skills because they're interacting with different children. Some children who have been at home by themselves, no siblings, and they don't have interaction with other children. Then you have others who come from a big family, so they know how to share. They know how to. They want to help other kids. And then you have others who are just like, no, it's mine. This is my thing. And then if they don't have their specific way, they have a temper tantrum. So you teach the children how to solve those issues on their own. Before we actually get involved, we'll watch from a distance and just see. Of course you have to model some behavior for them. So we do a lot of role playing. We have a solution board in my room. So then normally it's just like, sometimes I'll just look at the board and then the two will go over if they're fighting over a toy or whatever, block. I'll just look at the board and they'll walk over themselves and they'll follow the steps. And you have to teach them those things because some children don't know. And parents may not even have that time because they're working and they're not home all the time to teach those skills.
Now, are the parents involved in the preschool? Do they provide, because I know just from my own experience with my children's school, it's very closed off. It's a buzzer to get in the door, and you never really get past the main office. And when I was teaching, we used to have parents come in a lot and volunteer in the classrooms. Is that happening in schools today, or is that off the table?
Well, you do have parent involvement in the schools. I think there's definitely rules and procedures in place just for safety issues for the other children involved. But normally with our classrooms, we have a lot of parental involvement, yes.
Now, you know what, in the old days, we felt real comfortable going into the school, and we felt safe, and we felt that the kids were safe because we could come and go as we pleased. But after a situation like Columbine, and we lock the doors, and that stresses people out because they feel like, well, they want to keep a lot of people out, but I'm someone's parent. I want to be able to come in the door and come and go as I please. So it's a stress level, I think, with the safety issues that we have in today's schools.
Because I know it's got to be hard, especially with the little ones, being able to keep the parents involved. And I'm sure there's separation anxiety on both ends.
Sure.
Not just the students. I'm sure in September there's a lot of parents out in your parking lot crying.
Oh yeah, I've had it.
Yeah, I've done it. Yeah. So yes, I know. I thought it was going to be the greatest thing in the world, and I'm like, oh no, big mistake. And
I think it was easier to send my kids off to college than it was to send them to kindergarten.
Yeah. Well, no, see, I had a hard time with both. So I cry a lot, I guess.
It's okay. That's a good thing.
It's a mother thing.
That's another show.
That is another show. But maybe we could lay on a couch and talk about it. That would be great. Now, for kids coming from either really urban or really rural areas, I always imagine that preschool is more of a safety net. Not more, but also a safety net, because it can provide interventions earlier than when kids show up at kindergarten. So as a teacher, you get to observe things that may not be going according to schedule, or problems these children are having. So how does that work? When you had your program, did you feel like when they start school earlier, things can be detected earlier and addressed earlier than if they just show up for kindergarten?
Yeah, and I think we can offer them some things. We talked about conflict resolution. Just reading the book, some of your books, I think children can learn to live vicariously through the characters so that they can see someone else and observe their conflict and see how that gets resolved and not have to go through the conflict. If you miss all of those things and you just come to kindergarten and you didn't have some of those quality interventions and those quality instruction, you're not going to be ready. So and with learning about numbers and learning about birds and learning about animals and all of those things, we're preparing for biology, we're preparing for math, we're preparing for language arts, we're preparing for reading, but I think we're doing it in a hands-on, and again, whether John Dewey with the open classroom, Piaget, that hands-on fun approach, I think is what brings out that love of learning and getting the children ready to be lifelong learners. So then when the academics really starts to hit and it is more high stakes, I don't think it's as stressful, and in fact it can be enjoyable.
I think that's a great point.
I was going to say, even with being in preschool 3 and 4 year olds, we're able to detect, maybe there's a language development issue or cognitive development issues, and then they can provide services for those kids. So they have that opportunity to have it in school during the day while they come in the classroom, come out of the classroom. So they provide some
And I think
services.
also even the nutritional aspect of kids being in school full time, because they we know they have lunch, and a lot of schools offer breakfast. So we know that there's a acceptable amount of food that they're going to have on the days that they're at
And
school.
Nutrition is huge in those developmental years.
Absolutely. Now, funding seems to be, funding is a real problem when it comes to pre-K, and I think a lot of it's still the perception. I think people are not placing the importance and the value on pre-K. What would you say to somebody who doesn't feel that this is a priority for funding?
Well, funding is usually a selfish kind of thing. Everyone wants funding for their own kids and their own programs, but funding for your kids or some kid that lives over on the other side of town, maybe I'm not so excited about that. But I think we have to take that approach, and I know that, and I've seen this, that early childhood model that really was developed for some rural areas, for some urban areas, where the socioeconomics might not be what they are in the suburbs. I've seen a lot of suburban models that are going to that early childhood program because it's just something that makes sense. But again, some students, we have people that homeschool their kids. It's important that we just have that active engagement in not necessarily intense academics, but that learning process taking place in those formative years.
Would you like to add anything to that?
I'm just going, I teach in an urban area and we do struggle with the funding, and I just always ask any politician, I ask the board members all the time, if this were your child, what would you want for your child? You want the best education, whether it's at 3, 4, or 5 years old, you want the most qualified teachers in those classrooms. Why isn't it important to you?
That's great.
And if it turns into votes for them, the answer is it's important.
Yes.
But if it doesn't turn into votes for them, they might not think it's so important.
Yeah.
We may have to cut that part out.
No, hey, you know what though? It's the truth.
It's the truth. It really is the truth, and
And I hope that preschool gets the recognition. I hope people start placing more of a priority on it and understanding it better. I think it's maybe just been a lack of understanding. So having said that, we are now going to play a game we like to call Brainstorm. Okay, not the most original name. We know, we get it.
I like it.
Why reinvent the wheel?
Right, exactly.
The show is Brainstorm. We're brainstorming here.
Right.
Exactly.
So in the tradition of brainstorming, we will have some ideas, and if they're good ideas, we keep them. But if they're bad ideas, we ball them up, and you get to play basketball.
Great.
All right, and as you can see, we've had a lot of bad ideas over the last few episodes. So
That's okay.
there we go.
That's okay.
All right. Idea number 1, preschool is basically a babysitting service.
That's definitely a bad idea.
All right, you want to have the honor? All right.
Here you go. I'll pass it off to you. Go ahead, Yasmin. I knew you had a shot.
Idea 2, preschool is an investment in children.
We want to keep that one, I think.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's
with
keep that one. Idea 3, for taxpayers without school-age children, preschool is strictly a liability with no benefit.
Well, I think it is. That has a lot of benefits. I think having an educated society is something we all want, whether we have children.
All that one up, that's right. Yes.
Children in school or not in school still.
There you go. She's 2 for 2. It's going to be a lot of pressure on you as we go along.
There's always pressure.
Okay. Idea 4, kids don't need school to play with blocks and count to 10.
That's.
What is that?
You can have blocks at home, yes, but.
Well, exactly. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
so
I would totally disagree with that. I don't think that's all that you're doing in preschool.
Yeah, that's not
There
what
you
we're
go.
doing in preschool.
Good.
We're learning.
Idea 5. Preschool is the best preparation for a lifetime of learning.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Okay,
We keep
so
that
we'll
one.
keep that one. All right, we got 2. Children who attend preschool perform as well as those who don't.
I was going to say.
Man, that's like that is really open for discussion. That sounds
for
like
discussion? Okay.
Yeah, that's yeah.
All right, we'll kind of leave it in the middle.
Yeah. It depends how you take that one. I think preschool is huge and it's important, but I think learning can take place in those formative years.
All right, the brains of preschoolers are like sponges absorbing everything.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
And preschool only benefits low-income students.
Throw that.
I'll ball it up and I'll give you the honors.
Okay. Can I think I can make a hook shot from here? Oh, man.
I couldn't even help you with that.
Wow.
That was
I have issues when it comes to
wow.
shooting, so.
Okay. Okay. So Yazminelli, you win the basketball game there.
There you go. By far.
We're a team.
Yeah. Well, good. You know what? And we're all a team because I think
Yes.
we all want to see preschool succeed and
Absolutely.
expand
Absolutely.
throughout the country. So I want to thank both of you for joining me today. It's been really amazing. This was a great conversation. I want to thank the viewers for tuning in. We'll see you again next time on Brainstorm.
Why don't you ever see elephants hiding in trees? Because they're really good at it. Yeah, I get it.
They call me Maxie, but I prefer tripod. I was your above-average four-legged homie, and then wham, bam, minivan. Some people pity me. Now that's lame. I still run, fetch, and swim. And the ladies love me. I'm the ultimate wingman. Just don't ask me to high five.